Hey, welcome. It's time for another edition of Political Breakfast on WABE. I'm Lisa Rayam, and with me are our strategists, Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson. Hello to both of you.
Good morning.
Lisa, how are you doing?
Good. We come together as Atlanta is experiencing a heat wave of sorts.
Oh, my God.
I know. I went to the pool yesterday, and I had to leave because it was like too hot. It was too hot to be out by the pool.
No, you got it. You got to get in the water. You cannot. There is no like lay in poolside right now. That is one thing is dangerous. My daughter went with neighbors to the Chattahoochee on Sunday, so got out in the water and all that. It was the first time in a river. She's been in a lake, but we lather her up with sunscreen. We do. We're not crazy bad parents. Well, not the best, but we're not crazy bad parents. And she came home red as a beet. So, that Irish blood really is really haunting her this morning.
It is dangerous out there, yeah. There, we haven't seen you since you got this great recognition. Entrepreneur of what, all of Georgia or the entire nation? Which one?
See, there you go.
It's growing. It's growing by the minute. It's growing by the minute.
I was going to channel my inner Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and get some T-shirts made. So from now on, you guys need to refer to me as EOY, okay? Entrepreneur of the Year.
That's awesome.
Huge shout out to the Atlanta Business League, an organization that's been around Atlanta for 90 plus years, I think, in consolidation with the American Business League. Started in 1933. And I think I was the second recipient of the Entrepreneur of the Year Award, which is the most prestigious award that one can get in the city of Atlanta. And what's interesting about this, Lisa, real quick, shout out to Leona Davenport, a great woman that is very focusing on African-American businesses. But they went from making it Corporation of the Year to now Entrepreneur of the Year. And so what I found out is there's so many entrepreneurs in Atlanta. Just to repeat my boy, 5-time Grammy-winning Killer Mike says, Atlanta is the one place where you can be whoever you want to be. And definitely if you're a startup or entrepreneur, it was here. So Chris Womack from Southern Company did a wonderful video for me, congratulating me. That was a true surprise and true honor for him. And we had a great event over at the Gathering Spot. Shout out to Ryan Wilson, who's also the chair of the ABL board. And we had a couple hundred people show up. A lot of entrepreneurs didn't want it too political. Brian B. Rob, you was missed. A couple of the sisters asked where you were.
Looking for Brian specifically.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then Lisa, I know you tried to make it, but you couldn't make it. But just know that we had a lot of Political Breakfast fans in the audience who, once I came off the stage and was interviewed by Veronica over at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, a lot of conversations about politics, but particularly about this podcast.
That's fantastic. Well, I hate that I missed it. I was I was doing politics. I was speaking to the Walton County GOP that night. It would have been a much easier commute to your event than what I endured that night. But speaking of the podcast, I got a text this morning from a loyal Political Breakfast listener, my sister-in-law, Audrey Robinson, and she wanted to thank you, Tharon, because in her mini crossword puzzle this morning, one of the answers she only knew because she listened to Political Breakfast. The answer was Drake. So thank you for that cultural insight that you provided that helped my sister-in-law in her crossword puzzle. In white people music news, what we're talking about this week is the photo of Taylor Swift with Prince William and his children. So that's huge with white people right now. We're not talking about Drake.
So just real quickly, so indulge me for a second. So, I told you, I learned who my true friends are. And so, you're welcome to your sister-in-law for that cultural moment. But Kendrick Lamar decided to have a huge Juneteenth concert and played the song Not Like Us 5 times. And so NBA stars, rappers from the West Coast, were all on the stage dancing. And so my friends was like, are you still riding with Drake? And the answer to that question is yes. Now, I agree, K-Dot won the battle. But Drake is still my favorite rapper.
He's still the same.
And real quick, I won't say her name because she's a well-known person here in Atlanta. But Lisa, you should know this. I had a city official tell me that her 70-year-old white male neighbor came up to her and started talking to her about the beef. And she was like, how did you know about this? Like, you're my 70-year-old white. You never talked to me about hip hop, never stuff. And she was like, I listened to Tharon Johnson and Brian Robinson, Lisa on the podcast. So, of course, this city official, I won't say her name, she disagreed with me. She still thinks that K-Dot is still the man. But yeah, apparently that's one of our best episodes, Lisa. I mean, I get asked about that episode a lot.
Yeah, well, good deal. Well, this week we've got a lot to chat about in terms of the big debate that's about to take place here in Atlanta, just days away. President Joe Biden, just a burst of activity all across Georgia, getting ready for this big show. Former President Donald Trump doing some things. Just want to get your take, both of you, on what you're feeling, what you're seeing, and what you're hearing from people ahead of this, because it seems to have energized voters, who otherwise were just, kind of malaise about this presidential election. Brian, we'll begin with you.
I haven't felt the buzz until I was driving through downtown Monday morning and I saw the wrap around McCamish Pavilion there on the Georgia Tech campus across the street from CNN, and obviously that's going to be where there's a media roundup there, or folks can report from that location. There'll be a lot of news vans and news desks being sent up there through the week, so people coming through Atlanta are going to see that, and having it in your face like that kind of makes it real. Of course, we're seeing news today that President Biden's campaign has got 200 events planned this week. I don't really know what that really means. I don't think 200 events are going to go off all that great, but I'm sure a couple of them will. And I know on the Republican side, I woke up this morning to an email this morning welcoming me to come see President Trump when he lands at Hartsfield on Thursday. So I'm sure that's going to be a huge teeming crowd there. And of course, a big fundraiser with some of Atlanta's wealthiest people will take place in Buckhead after the debate. So a lot going on around here right now. And I don't know if there's an advantage one way or the other. One thing I'm seeing in this public narrative is that the Democrats have this huge ground operation up and going in Georgia, and the Republicans are not doing anything. And I think from what I'm hearing from the Trump campaign, that's very overblown. They are staffing up rapidly. Unlike President Trump, they did have a primary to get through, and now we're going full steam ahead, opening up offices. They just opened up one in Fayetteville 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So I think you're going to continue to see more of that kind of generating news, generating energy on the Republican side as well.
Yeah, you had Governor Kemp, sending that message recently to Republicans that it's time to step up the ground game. So slowly but surely, I think that may be happening. Tharon, what are you seeing and feeling and hearing at this juncture?
Well, Lisa, I have to always trust that what B-Rob is sharing with us on this podcast is not fake news. That's real news, right? Because, a few weeks ago, I think if we had to ask B-Rob that question, do you feel that the ground game from the Trump campaign has existing in Georgia, he would probably say, yeah, they're building on it. So apparently there's been some progress in the last few weeks, but I think it's a little too late. The thing that I have been hearing and I've been feeling, Lisa, is twofold. Number one, 200 events will happen on election night, because why? I mean, you got a lot of people who are trained like me. We're the Obama sort of organizers, right? And what you see from this Biden-Harris campaign, they're going back to the Obama 08, Obama 12 sort of ground organizing. So they have these ground organizers all across the state, Lisa and Lily. I mean, and so these events are happening. Let me tell you why I know they're happening. I had actually committed to doing a debate watch party, which I still will be doing. I encourage our listeners to come to the gathering spot where we'll be having a debate watch party. And we were preparing for like 500 people. Well, when we found out that the Biden-Harris campaign were doing 200 events and they're trying to have a massive turnout at Georgia Tech, we were like, man, we may want to step our email game up and get our RSVPs in a little bit more. So the excitement on the Democratic side is back, right? And I think that you not only have these 200 events that will happen on the day and the night, there'll be a lot of focus on pre-election sort of turnout. They want the president, when he flies in and goes to the CNN debate location, to feel that momentum, to feel that presence from Georgia voters. And so I feel much better about the staffing up that the campaign is doing. They got multiple offices, not just this one in Fayetteville that B-Rob mentioned. I mean, I think they got probably about 50 offices that are either open or about to open in Georgia. And I think at the end of the campaign, you'll probably have 100+ offices open and running in Georgia. Now let's get back to the other feeling I have. And this is why, this podcast is so great. And I want to just, sort of share this with our listeners. And I got to give B-Rob a little credit. I always tease him. I say, oh, you want to know more things that are going on in the black community than me. You go talk to a couple black women and you see a black guy, in the Starbucks in Brookhaven. Now all of a sudden you're the expert on black issues. Well, let me just say this to our listeners.
Brian, it's true, because we hear that a lot.
I'm a one-stop shop for all black culture and news. You just come to me and I will let you know what you need to know.
But to be fair to B-Rob, I do this on my white Republican male side too. You have to spend time with the opposite side, right? People who are willing to share their thoughts. And we do a lot of that because that's why we're able to come on this podcast and be factual. But also our credibility is intact. So I will say this. The Trump campaign has an all-out targeted, it's laser light, Lisa, on black men. I am getting filled with calls. Barbershop owners, Jamaican patty restaurant owners, club event space. The Trump campaign is reaching out to us and they want us to host an event for him, or they want us to host Tim Scott and the congressman from Florida. I forget his name, Ronald or Donald or something, what his name is, from Florida. Byron Donald is coming to town. Tim Scott is coming to town. And so it is real. They are laser light focused on trying to utilize this week in Georgia. Because it's a week. It's not just the actual debate. Like, the campaigns are here. You're doing all these things. And so I would say this: wake up, Democrats. Wake up, Georgia Democrats. Particularly, we got to wake up on our direct messaging to black men. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to work overall, but there is a laser light focus on it. And I didn't feel it until recently, Lisa, when I started, cigar bars. I knew a guy that owns a cigar place, and he's like, hey, man, should I take the money? And I was like, well, brother, no, I don't want you to have to take the money, but I don't want you to do the event. And so what we agreed upon is that, okay, if I don't take this money, and I don't do this event, I want the Democrats to do it here. So I think there's an ongoing conversation in the Georgia campaigns about overall, how do you build momentum leading up to this debate? And then there's, of course, a spinning that me and B-Rob do very well after the debate. But then there's that sort of groundwork that's being laid to try to influence certain constituency groups. Last thing I'll say is this. I am very pleased on the outreach that the Biden-Harris campaign is doing to the black community, the young voters, particularly black male young voters, and also to the Latino community and to the LGBTQ plus community as well. And so while we're not talking a lot about those constituency groups, the Hispanic, young, LGBTQ plus, but it is going to be front and center a battle for the black male vote in Georgia.
I was gonna say,
absolutely.
But is that really the target? Are black men in Georgia, a swath of them, on the fence about who they're voting for? Because you ask them, you talk to them, we've tried to find those black men and haven't been able to. So have you found them there? Have you found them, Brian? Is this a real thing that a lot of black male voters here in Georgia are on the fence and
yes, maybe
leaning towards voting for the former president, Donald Trump?
Yeah. Couple of things here. One, and let me back up and say congratulations to Tharon on his award, but it's an important segue really into what I want to say. The black community in Georgia has become extraordinarily entrepreneurial on its pathway toward building a significant increase in wealth over the last generation. And that's such a wonderful thing to see. So good for our economy, so good for our state, so good for the black community here. And as that's happening, their political viewpoints are changing and they are diversifying. And we are seeing that happen right here in real time in Georgia. Political Breakfast listeners heard me say, what was it, guys, Lisa, Tharon, 2 months ago? I was like, Trump campaign, laser focused, black man, 18 to 44, right? And everybody's like, we'll wait and see. And so Tharon is here confirming what I was saying 2 months ago, that he is seeing it. He is seeing that money, that resource, that investment going into that campaign. And look, they know, is it real? They would not be spending money on it if it wasn't real. If it was,
I don't know.
They would not. They got plenty of other places to spend money, right? They can go on offense in Minnesota. They need to go on offense to some degree to hold their lead in Pennsylvania, hold their lead in Michigan. There are numerous states where Biden is closer to Trump than he is here. And the fact that they're still spending money on it shows they believe they can make a huge impact. And I don't know the real numbers. Y'all are first to tell people I'm crap at math. That's why I'm a professional writer. But in my mind, if Trump gets just 15% of the black vote, and almost all of that's going to be black men, just a handful of black women remain solidly Democratic in all the data. If he just gets 15 or more, it's going to be almost impossible for Biden to make up the difference with white college-educated voters who have drifted to the Democrats in recent years. A lot of those folks are already Democrats. They're already baked into the current numbers. So I think this is one of the most interesting elements to watch. I know we've discussed it here a good bit. And Tharon talked a lot about the turnout effort. And Tharon knows a lot more about turnout effort than I do. He knows a lot more about ground game than I do. I've always been solely on the communications side. And I've never, confession here, I've never believed in turnout efforts, really. I've just always kind of think it's something you just say that it doesn't really mean anything, right? It's just something people want to hear you say you're doing. And one thing that's changed my perspective is that Democrats used to have the turnout operation because they had the most low propensity voters in their coalition. That has changed. As college-educated folks have become Democrats, those are high propensity voters that Republicans have lost. A lot of the Republican coalition is now low propensity voters, a lot of blue-collar workers of all races, but black workers as well. And so now Republicans, more so than in the past, have to invest in turnout effort to target folks who will vote for them if they show up. So now we're in this box that Democrats used to be in where we got to make sure they show up.
Tharon, have you actually heard this from black male business owners in particular? They're saying black male business owners in particular.
Yeah.
Have you had the conversation with one?
One of the things I do, I go to Off the Hook Barbershop, right? And yes, I am a bald head black male in Atlanta.
Hanging out at a barbershop.
That hangs out at a barbershop. Now, clearly, so I'm not going in there to get my line up, and I'm not getting a mohawk kind of dude. I'm going in there for really 3 reasons.
Information,
right?
Yeah.
Number one, I'm going in there because my barber, shout out to JJ, does a great job of keeping my skin looking good, and also my wife, who's a dermatologist, definitely gives me a regimen. So I go there because I have to treat the scalp. The second reason I go there is because he just shapes up my goatee better than anybody, right? Yeah. So I got to have that goatee game on fire, right? Brian rocks the booty face, sort of typical white boy look. I got to rock the goatee, but I keep it down because I don't want to be too, aggressive with my graying that's going on. But the main reason I go to the barbershop is exactly what you said, Lisa. I need intel. I want to know what the streets are saying. So here's the truth. Are there some black men out there that are conservative? Yes. It's been that way for decades, right? I mean, you think about it in your families, and most black people would tell you always had that one uncle, maybe your father, your grandfather, or a cousin who came up to over some money, right? And all of a sudden now they start making money. Oh, I'm a little bit more conservative, right? Or you had that one guy who went to the military, right? And he, got able to, get to know some Republican conservative people while he was serving in the army. I mean, those people have existed for decades. Am I meeting people who are brave enough to come to me and stand in front of my face? I'm a 6'2" black man with a bald head and a goatee, and tell me to my face, look me in my eye, I am voting for Donald Trump in November? No one has done that. Now, I'm probably setting myself up because that may happen after this podcast airs. But what I am seeing, Lisa, is that when it comes up in the barbershop, I'm not getting as much I'm getting a little bit more silence, right? Like people, I sit in a chair and I just throw something out there and then everybody just go crazy. So it's very similar to what we felt in 2020. There was a lot of chatter about black people may vote for Trump in 2020. And so this is not, the first time. Now, what has changed is, let's just put it into perspective. Just because they're having meetings at barbershops and cigar bars and restaurants, B-Rob, don't mean that they're investing the hundreds of millions of dollars that the Biden-Harris campaign investing in the black male vote, right? Yes, they are doing some symbolic events, but when I tell you, if you look at the media buys, radio, digital, TV, ground game operations, the amount of resources that are being put to that particular community versus the Republicans, it's unparalleled. The one thing I also want to say is this, Lisa, the fact that it's in Atlanta, the Trump campaign knows you can't come to the A and not talk to black people. Like that's why they're doing it. Like you can't come down here and spend all your time up in North Fulton or over there in East Cobb and Brookhaven with B-Rob are. We got a little pocket of Republicans and, go down to Macon. No, you coming into the A, into Georgia Tech, you better talk to some black people. So that's why they're doing it. And so I believe this debate, and to kind of segue into the debate, because we haven't talked about that, I said that the Morehouse speech was going to be a turning point in the Biden campaign in a good way for them, and it was. He survived, right? You had a little chatter back and forth. You had very peaceful protests, but he came out of that with momentum, and he's been able to continue that momentum going into this debate. This debate would be another monumental moment in this campaign, and I think that beyond the symbolic barbershops and cigar bar and student talks they want to have, will Donald Trump be able to say something in a very systemic way that has a policy promise to it that he can deliver on, particularly for black men? I think Biden will have that answer. Biden will speak directly to black men, to young voters, LGBTQ, and these disaffected Republicans, and tell them what he's done and what he's doing to help their families and to help them with their economic prosperity and healthcare and public safety. I think that's going to be the turning point. And mark my word, Donald Trump will yell. He is so angry. He hadn't had a chance to talk directly to the president, so he's going to try to insult him. He's going to bully him. He's going to talk over him. But Biden campaign must stay focused on those policy-driven issues to talk directly to the constituents that they need to vote for them in November. So, no, to answer your question, Lisa, no one has come to my face and say I'm with Trump. But do I think they exist? Yes. Are they vocal as Brian wants you to believe? No. But are they concerned about what the message is from both candidates that's going to help them protect their families, provide for their families, and make more money? Absolutely.
So, Brian, what is your opinion? There's no room for the insults. There's no room for the yelling and all the antics at this debate, right? Trump has to stay on message, on point, and you're smiling because you know that he won't, right?
I think that we have a long enough track record and empirical data to make a conclusion that Trump's going to be Trump. Yeah. And, for 9 years, we've heard Democrats and media commentators say, Trump's going to get on there and he's going to make an ass of himself. He's going to be a jerk and he'll have the floor fall out from under him. And that just never happens. He does hold his own fairly well in these environments. Does he turn some people off? Sure, absolutely. Does he do things that people love as well? Yes, he does. He's a showman, and he's a showman unlike we've ever seen in this environment in our history. And the rules that apply to everybody else apply to him differently. And one thing in these 9 years that I've never been able to figure out is why that is, like why he defies gravity the way that he does. So I was asked this weekend because Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, was doing an interview, and she encouraged Trump in that interview to stick to the policies and avoid personal attacks. Now, whether or not he does that or not, Lisa and Tharon, I do think that is good advice, and here is why. If you look at the policies of where Americans are most focused in this election, they are all on issues where Trump has a polling advantage over Joe Biden. They are the economy, they are immigration, they're public safety. And we are seeing in the news again, kind of like we did in Georgia with the Laken Riley murder in Athens, now a rape that happened in a park in Queens, New York last week by an illegal immigrant who came into the country in 2021 from Ecuador. That kind of stuff is going to be a weight around Joe Biden's neck in this debate. So I think sticking to policy makes a lot of sense for Trump because the numbers are on his side. Democrats want to talk about stuff like abortion, but they're going to have a numerical advantage in the polling. But the problem for them there is that abortion is far down the list of voters' top concerns. If they're talking about stuff that's number 10 on the list, they are losing ground. They're wasting breath. Biden's got to have a message on those three things. And I think to some degree, we know what they are. We're beginning to hear him talk about immigration more. I think it's too little too late. Democrats can disagree. And the economy is going to be tough for him. He so wants to brag on his record and the macroeconomic data. He wants to look at unemployment. He wants to look at economic GDP growth. All of that's true, but Americans aren't feeling it. And so it's hard for him to go out there and say, look, you ingrates, quit whining. The economy's doing great. I've done a great job. That's a really hard message when that's not what Americans are feeling because they still feel squeezed by inflation. They can't buy a new house because of interest rates. They feel like they're living week to week, even though the economy's, the numbers look good, it's still squeezing the decisions and the choices that Americans have economically.
real quick, Lisa, B-Rob and I, we spend a lot of time together. And one thing we do, as in sports, we say this is a copycat league, right? And so B-Rob was with me recently in Orlando when I actually saw a CNN poll, right? And I want to repeat this, and he remembers this. I said the top 3 issues for voters at that time, and this is roughly about a week and a half ago, right, B-Rob? Let's just say less than 2 weeks ago. It was the economy, protecting democracy, and crime, all right? 65% said the economy, 58% said protecting democracy, and crime was 48%. Now, what B-Rob has done, a very, very, shrewd communications, specialist here, right? He's taking the economy, which I believe that I push back on him respectfully, that I think most people, you're feeling the economic turn, like it's turning in the right way. Inflation is stabilizing, right? You still need to lower the gas prices, lower the food prices. But ultimately, the economy is back. It's booming. We have job growth in here. And then we look at crime. I mean, the president is actually doing something about crime. But where the 2 issues where I think the 2 gentlemen are going to have to figure out where they're going to decide to spend most of their time is, do you talk about saving democracy, which that polls second. And I think that we agree Donald Trump is not trying to save democracy. Matter of fact, this Project 2025, which we need to park that, Lisa, and talk about another podcast episode, is doing everything but save democracy. It's trying to take over the United States government. They don't want to just win the election. They want to basically destroy democracy, destroy the Constitution, destroy our form of government. But the immigration, the president has got to go a little bit more conservative on immigration. Don't go all the way to the right where some Republicans are, right? Because, remember, we got to remind our listeners, we had a deal on the table. The Senate and the House were going to agree to it. It was Donald Trump who called these leaders and said, do not agree to that deal. Why? Because it's going to help Joe Biden get reelected as president of the United States. That's true. I'm not lying about it. That's happened. So you're going to see a robust debate on the economy. You're going to see a robust debate on public safety, where I think the 2 moments in the debate is how they're going to do when it comes to immigration, abortion as well. But also about protecting the democracy. And I think that if Joe Biden can get Donald Trump upset and to show that this man literally is not trying to save democracy, he's trying to destroy it with his actions and his rhetoric, I think that has got to be a win coming out of debate for the Biden campaign.
Can I address that really quickly? I won't filibuster on this because what Tharon is saying is right. Like, that protecting democracy thing is popping in polls. Here's my theory on it. It is popping in polls because it's an overwhelmingly big talking point for Democratic voters. But I think that it is kind of limited to them. Now, it's widespread enough amongst them that it's going to show up in polling fairly strongly. But I don't think that that's an issue that is moving independents. And certainly, Republicans now sort of roll their eyes at that language as something they see as just a partisan attack on Trump. So that's something that I think Democrats are latching onto. Obviously, they think it's strong. They're using it in their messaging. You hear them using the word chaos a lot when talking about Trump. That's telling me that they are seeing those words, those phrases begin to pop with voters and make a difference. But I do think that when it comes to the protecting democracy issue, and for me as a voter myself, it matters to me. Mm-hmm. I just don't see a lot of evidence that beyond the Democratic base, that's a message that's moving people.
I think I just got 2 words: January 6th. The Republicans, the independent and moderate voters I talked to, B-Rob, and you remember, we always talk about this. We were live on this podcast, right, when that day happened. One of the most horrific days that we've ever seen. I won't say it's the most, but it's definitely up there, when we saw people who rallied behind a man who incited violence, who basically refused to accept election results, put his vice president and other members of Congress in harm's way. I think that there's enough white people out there, and we know one in particular, B-Rob, who told us privately why he decided not to continue in the profession that we were involved with him on, because on that day, what he witnessed, his white, predominantly male counterparts do to try to create an insurrection on the U.S. Capitol. I think there's enough voters out there, once reminded, will remember that day Donald Trump fell. He failed American people. He failed himself. He failed his country by inciting that riot. And then more importantly, not doing anything about it. I think that needs to be sort of a key part of the saving democracy conversation that I think they're about to happen.
Well, again, we're days away from this big debate. The anticipation is mounting. We're going to check back in 2 days, the actual day of the debate, which is Thursday. And just kind of want to hear from both of you guys the issues that they should talk about. We touched on this a little bit. Some of the issues you think they should touch on and some of the issues they should probably stay away from. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Political Breakfast, and we'll check in with you later this week.